What you're about to hear is from a nurse who whispered prayers in hospital corridors for years, and then learned those prayers were never lost. Hello friends, I'm Emily. Welcome back to Esoteric Uplift. Let's read the testimony shared with us today. My name is Colette Mbai. I am a 51-year-old intensive care nurse from Birmingham, Alabama. I have held the hands of people leaving this world more times than I can count. I have stood in hospital corridors at 2 a.m. and whispered prayers I wasn't sure anyone was receiving. On a Thursday night in February, my heart went into a rhythm it had no business being in. For 8 minutes, I was somewhere else entirely. And in those 8 minutes, I was shown something about prayer that restructured every belief I thought I had. Please subscribe to this channel. This message was not given to me to keep. Let me tell you what a Thursday night looks like in an ICU. It doesn't look like television. It doesn't look like running and shouting and dramatic revelations under fluorescent lights. Mostly it looks like quiet vigilance, charting, checking. The particular attentiveness of someone whose job is to notice the thing that hasn't happened yet. I'd been a nurse for 26 years. ICU for the last 14. I knew that floor the way you know your own kitchen in the dark. Every corner, every sound, every rhythm that was normal and every rhythm that wasn't. That Thursday, I came in at 7 p.m. for a 12-hour shift. My colleague Reginald was finishing his day when I arrived. "How's the floor?" I asked, pulling on my badge. "Bed 4 is restless," he said. Bed 7 finally stabilized. Bed 2, he paused. "Bed 2 is on her way out, Colette. Tonight, probably." I nodded. I knew how to hold that information. You learn to carry it without letting it crush you. "Her family know?" I asked. "They're here," he said. "In the waiting room." "The daughter hasn't left in 3 days." "I'll check on them," I said. Reginald paused at the door. "You doing okay? You look tired." "I'm always tired," I said. Standard nurse answer. The answer we give so the question stops coming. He knew better than to push. The first 4 hours of the shift were steady. Medications administered. Charts updated. The daughter from bed 2 came to ask me questions I answered as honestly as I could, which is all a person can do in those moments. Around 11, I sat at the nurse's station to chart. That was the last ordinary thing I did for 8 minutes. I got up from the station at 11:40 to check on bed 7. A routine walk, maybe 30 feet of corridor. I had made that walk several hundred times on that floor alone. I was 12 feet from the doorway when something changed. Not pain. I want to be clear about that because the first thing everyone asks is whether it hurt. It did not hurt. What happened was more like a sudden fundamental disagreement between my body and the evening's plan. My heart, which had kept its own reliable counsel for 51 years, decided without consulting me to try a different rhythm entirely. I stopped walking, not because I chose to stop, because the option to continue simply wasn't available anymore. I reached for the corridor wall. My hand found it. I stood there for approximately 3 seconds. I know because the security footage was reviewed later, leaning against the wall with the specific expression of someone who has just realized their body has been lying to them. My colleague Amara was coming out of the supply room. "Colette." She saw my face. Nurses read faces the way other people read words. "What's wrong?" "Something's off," I said. My voice was steady. I was proud of that briefly. "Sit down," she said, immediately moving toward me. "I'm fine," I said. The automatic response, the one I had given Reginald 4 hours earlier. "Colette, sit." But the sitting happened without my cooperation. The corridor floor received me with no ceremony whatsoever. Amara was already calling out for help before I had fully arrived at the floor. I heard her voice, sharp and professional. I heard the monitor alarms distantly. And then the corridor, the floor, the noise, and the whole ordinary world stepped back. In 26 years of nursing, I have been present at many departures. I have watched people cross from this side to whatever is on the other side, and I have always paid attention to the moment of it, not morbidly, but with the specific reverence of someone who believes that moment deserves a witness. What I noticed consistently was that people almost never looked afraid at the very end. Afraid before, sometimes terrified before. But at the actual moment, almost universally, something in their faces settled, released. I used to wonder what that was. Now I know. My own crossing had no drama attached to it. No tunnel, no rushing wind, no sense of rising. One moment I was on an ICU corridor floor in Birmingham, Alabama, with Amara's voice above me and the sound of running footsteps approaching. The next moment, those things were simply no longer where I was. What replaced them was, and I have spent months finding language for this, immediate. That is the best word I have. Not gradual, not transitional, immediate, like a channel changing, like walking through a door so thin you don't feel the threshold beneath your feet. I was somewhere, and then I was somewhere else, and the somewhere else felt, against every rational expectation, more familiar than anything I had left behind. I know this place, I thought clearly. No fear attached to it. Just recognition, the specific bone-deep recognition of a place you have been before but couldn't name until this moment. And underneath the recognition, a relief so complete it moved through me like warm water. Oh, I said to nothing and everything. I've been here before, and the presence confirmed what I already felt. Yes, it said, you have. 26 years of nursing accumulates something no medical training prepares you for. It is not trauma exactly, though there is some of that. It is not grief exactly, though there is much of that too. It is weight, the specific, layered, compressed weight of absorbing other people's worst moments professionally and personally, while maintaining the functional steadiness that the job demands. You learn to carry it efficiently. You learn to compartmentalize with surgical precision. What you don't learn is how to put it down, because there is never a right moment to put it down. There is always the next patient, the next family, the next corridor, the next chart, the next hand that needs holding. The moment I arrived in that place, I felt every piece of that weight simply leave. Not violently removed, not dramatically lifted, just released. The way tension leaves a muscle that has finally been given permission to stop contracting. What is that? I thought, bewildered by the lightness. The understanding came immediately. Everything you've been carrying that was never yours to carry permanently. I stood in that lightness for a moment that had no duration I could measure. I didn't know how heavy it was, I said. You couldn't, came the response. You were inside it. I thought about every nurse, every doctor, every caregiver who walked around daily with that compressed weight and called it fine, called it coping, called it professional. They carry so much, I said. Yes, the presence confirmed. And most of them pray under the weight without realizing. The weight itself is a form of prayer. The showing up despite the heaviness. That counts. I felt something stir in me at that. Prayer. That word would become the center of everything I was about to be shown. I want to use language I actually know. In nursing, a diagnosis is not the beginning of a problem. It is the moment a problem that already existed receives its accurate name. The patient was already sick before the diagnosis. But the diagnosis is when understanding arrives, and with it, the possibility of response. The presence arrived the way a correct diagnosis arrives, not as new information, as the accurate name for something I had already been experiencing my entire life without knowing what to call it. I felt it before I perceived it. The way you feel a change in atmospheric pressure before you see the weather it announces. Then it was simply there. And I knew, not through reasoning, not through a process of comparison and elimination, through the same mechanism that makes you recognize your own mother's voice in a crowded room before your brain has finished processing the sound. Direct, certain, prior to thought. You know who I am, he said. Not a question, an acknowledgement. Yes, I said. And then something happened that I was not prepared for. I felt seen, not observed, not assessed. Seen at the specific experience of being known completely, including the parts that have never been spoken aloud. Every private fear held in a hospital corridor. Every prayer whispered over a patient with no certainty it was reaching anywhere. Every moment of doubt carefully concealed beneath professional composure. All of it visible, all of it known, and none of it, not one moment of it, held against me. You've been faithful in the dark, he said. I felt those words move through me like a physical thing. I didn't always know if it mattered, I admitted. I know, he said. That's exactly what I want to show you. There are moments in a conversation where one sentence rearranges everything. In nursing, I have delivered those sentences. The surgery didn't go as we hoped. We need to talk about next steps. There's something we need you to understand about what's coming. I have watched those sentences land in people's bodies, the physical impact of words carrying permanent information. What he said to me was a sentence like that. He said, "Every prayer you have ever prayed was received." I went completely still. "Everyone?" I said. "Everyone," he confirmed. "Even the ones that felt like they went nowhere?" I asked. "Especially those," he said. I thought about the prayers I had prayed over the years in hospital corridors. Whispered prayers over sleeping patients at 2 a.m, prayers in my car before a difficult shift, prayers that felt thin and unsure and amateur. Nothing like the confident declarations I heard from people who seemed to know how to pray properly. "I didn't always know what I was doing," I said. "That's irrelevant," he said. Not dismissively. Factually, the way a doctor says something is irrelevant to a diagnosis. Not to minimize it, but to clear away what doesn't apply. The intention was real, he continued. The love was real. The concern for another person was real. Those are the components. The language, the structure, the confidence, those are not the components. I felt something enormous release in my chest. 26 years of wondering whether my prayers were good enough, whether they were reaching anything, whether the uncertainty in them disqualified them somehow. They all arrived? I asked again. I needed to hear it twice. Every single one, he said. "Come, let me show you what prayer actually is. I was raised in the church. I mean that in the full Southern, complete with Sunday dinner and Wednesday Bible study sense of the phrase. Prayer was something I was taught early and practiced consistently. I knew the forms of it, the postures, the language, the difference between a supplication and an intercession. I thought I understood prayer. What he showed me restructured that understanding from the foundation. What do you believe prayer is? He asked first. Talking to God, I said. The most basic answer, the one I would have given at 7 years old. That is one description, he said. The way saying a river is water moving is accurate but incomplete. He showed me prayer as I had never conceived of it. Not as communication in the conventional sense. One party speaking, another party receiving, a gap between them that the words are meant to cross, but as something more fundamental, more intimate, more woven into the actual fabric of human existence. Prayer, he said, is the mechanism by which human consciousness connects to its source. It is not a practice you do. It is what you are when you are most fully yourself. I paused at that. Most fully myself, I repeated. When you sit with a dying patient and hold their hand without trying to fix anything, he said. When you walk into a room carrying love for a person you've never met because they are suffering and suffering matters to you, that is prayer. Whether or not a word is spoken. I've been praying more than I knew, I said quietly. Constantly, he confirmed. Most caregivers are. They simply weren't told the correct name for what they were doing. I felt 26 years of work reclassify itself in an instant. Walk me through it more, I said. Because I need to understand this clearly. In nursing, clarity saves lives. Vague understanding leads to medication errors, missed symptoms, delayed interventions. I needed the precise mechanism, not the poetry. He understood that about me immediately. Think of it this way, he began. You understand how a heart monitor works? Yes, I said. The monitor doesn't create the heart's electrical activity. It detects and transmits what is already occurring. The signal exists independently of whether the machine is reading it. Okay, I said, following. Prayer is not the signal, he said. Prayer is the act of becoming a clear transmission point for what is already real. I sat with that. So when I pray for a patient, I started. You are not generating something from nothing and sending it upward hoping it arrives, he said. You are aligning yourself, your attention, your love, your concern, with something that already exists and is already available to that person. Like tuning a frequency, I said. Exactly like that, he confirmed. Then the power of the prayer isn't in the words, I said. The words are useful, he said. They focus the tuning. But the power is in the alignment, the sincerity, the real love or real concern behind the words. That is what carries the transmission. So a stumbling, uncertain prayer from someone who genuinely loves the person they're praying for, I started, transmits more clearly than a perfectly constructed prayer spoken from obligation or performance, he completed. I thought about every prayer I had ever dismissed as insufficient because it lacked eloquence or confidence. I had it backwards, I said. Most people do, he replied. That's why I needed you to understand this clearly enough to say it plainly. I have to ask about this, I said, because it's the question that breaks people. Ask it, he said. Why do prayers feel unanswered? A mother prays for her sick child and the child doesn't recover. A person prays for relief and the suffering continues. How do you explain that to someone who has prayed faithfully and watched the answer not arrive? He did not deflect the question. He did not soften it. I respected that enormously. First, he said, understand the difference between a prayer being received and a prayer producing the outcome the person requested. They're not the same, I said. They are never automatically the same, he confirmed. Every prayer is received. Every sincere transmission arrives, but the response operates within a complexity that a single human perspective cannot fully map. That sounds like a diplomatic way of saying we don't get what we ask for, I said directly. He did not flinch at my directness. What I'm saying, he replied, is that the prayer always does something. Always. But what it does is not always visible from the position of the person praying. He showed me, in that specific way that knowledge arrived there as feeling. A prayer prayed over a patient who did not recover, and then he showed me what that prayer had done. The comfort it had placed in the room, the steadiness it had given the nurse's hands during a difficult procedure, the peace it had carried to the patient in a way that bypassed visible response. The prayer worked, I said quietly, just not the way she expected. Prayers are rarely wasted, he said. They are frequently redirected. Then the unanswered feeling, I said, is a perception problem, he said gently. Not a reception problem. This section arrived unexpectedly. I hadn't asked about children specifically. But he introduced this, and I understood immediately why, because of what it reveals about the mechanism of prayer itself. Children's prayers, he said, carry a particular quality. Why? I asked. Because children have not yet learned to doubt the connection, he said. They have not been taught explicitly or by cultural osmosis that they might not be worth listening to, that they might be doing it wrong, that the connection might not be real. They pray without self-consciousness, I said. They pray without interference, he said. A child who prays for their grandmother to feel better is not simultaneously monitoring the prayer for theological correctness or questioning whether they've earned the right to ask. They simply reach out, directly, completely. He showed me a child's prayer as it traveled. I cannot fully describe what that looked like because it operated on a frequency I don't have earthly instruments to measure. But the quality of it was unobstructed, clear, moving directly and without detour. It's the absence of static, I said. Exactly, he confirmed. The static adults carry, I started, doubt, unworthiness, the sense that prayer requires credentials, the monitoring and the qualifying and the wondering if the form is correct. All of that is interference, he said. It doesn't block the prayer, but it thickens the channel. I thought about the children I had seen praying in hospital waiting rooms. Simple, earnest, completely unsophisticated prayers spoken with absolute conviction, and the parents beside them praying with more theological precision and far less certainty. We should learn from them, I said. That is not a new suggestion, he replied. There was something close to warmth and amusement in it. Tell me more about the prayers without words, I said. Because I felt that. I just didn't know that's what it was. Describe what you felt, he said. I thought about it honestly. Sitting with a patient who is afraid, I said slowly. Not speaking, just being there. Holding the space steady. Willing calm into the room somehow. Wanting so much for them to feel less alone. That, he said, is one of the most direct forms of prayer that exists. It never felt like praying, I said. That's because you were taught prayer was a verbal activity, he said. But language is a relatively recent human development. The capacity for prayer is not. The capacity for prayer is as old as consciousness itself. older than any word ever spoken. He showed me the spectrum of wordless prayer. A parent sitting beside a sleeping, sick child, not asking for anything specifically, just loving fiercely in the dark. Prayer. A person who has lost their faith entirely sitting in a hospital chapel and feeling something unnamed but real in the quality of the silence. Prayer. A nurse who has stopped believing in the theological structure of religion but still, automatically, instinctively, directs something outward over every critically ill patient she cares for. Prayer. "That's me," I said quietly. "I know," he replied. "I stopped feeling certain about what I believed," I admitted. "But I never stopped doing that. That thing of directing something toward the people I cared for. That thing you kept doing," he said, "regardless of your certainty. That was one of the most faithful acts of your life." I felt that in a place beneath argument. "The theology is optional," he said. "The love is the prayer." "I need to know this," I said. "For practical reasons. For every nurse who has ever whispered something over a patient at 2 a.m. and wondered if it did anything at all." He showed me, not described, showed me, in the way that knowledge there arrived as direct experience rather than information delivered. He showed me a hospital room at night, patient sleeping, monitors steady, a nurse standing at the bedside, checking a line, adjusting a blanket, and quietly, privately, inaudibly praying. And he showed me what happened in that room as a result. The quality of the air in the room changed, not physically detectable, not something a sensor would record, but real. The way the quality of a room changes when someone who loves you walks into it. You feel it before you see them. The patient's nervous system responded to it, subtly. The particular way a body relaxes slightly when it registers it is not alone and is cared for. The patient felt it, I said. "The body always knows when genuine love is present," he said. "Even an unconscious body. Even someone who is unresponsive?" I asked. "Especially someone who is unresponsive," he said firmly. "The absence of visible response does not indicate the absence of reception." I thought about every patient I had ever prayed over who could not speak, could not squeeze a hand, could not demonstrate awareness. "They received it," I said. "Every time," he confirmed. I felt the weight, the good weight, of 26 years of corridor prayers and bedside prayers and car before shift prayers suddenly reveal their full significance. "We should tell nurses this," I said. "That is part of why you're here," he replied. "Show me the most powerful form of prayer," I said. I asked it directly because I am a direct person. Nurses develop that quality or they don't last long. He did not hesitate. What he showed me was not what I expected. Not a saint kneeling in a cathedral. Not a congregation united in fervent petition. Not anyone with exceptional spiritual credentials or particular theological training. He showed me presence. Complete, undivided, genuine human presence offered to another human being in a moment of real need. A woman sitting beside her husband of 40 years as he moved toward his final hours. Not speaking. Not praying in any form she would have called praying. Simply there. Completely there. Holding his hand and being entirely present to the reality of who he was and what this moment was and how much he had mattered. "That is the most powerful form?" I said. "Because it requires everything," he said. "Words require very little comparatively. You can speak a prayer while thinking about what you need to do afterward. You can recite a prayer while mentally elsewhere entirely. But genuine presence," I started, "requires the complete surrender of distraction," he confirmed. "It requires choosing one thing, this person, this moment, this love, over everything else pulling for your attention. And that surrender itself is the prayer," I said. "That surrender is the purest form of it," he confirmed. "It says, without words, you matter more to me right now than my own comfort, my own agenda, my own need to be somewhere else." I thought about every time I had stood at a bedside fully present versus professionally present. "I haven't always managed it," I said honestly. "No," he agreed. "But you have managed it more than you know." "This one matters to me personally," I said. "I know," he replied. I have prayed through doubt my whole life, I said. Not performed certainty, actual doubt. Genuine uncertainty about whether the connection was real, whether I was heard, whether the whole framework was true. And you prayed anyway, he said. I didn't know what else to do, I admitted. That, he said, is one of the most honest and mature forms of prayer that exists. I waited for the explanation. Doubt is not the opposite of faith, he said. Certainty is not the requirement for connection. The requirement for connection is honesty. And a person who prays through genuine doubt is being profoundly honest with themselves and with what they're praying toward. More honest than someone who performs certainty they don't feel, I said. Considerably, he confirmed. Performance is distance. It maintains the form while the interior goes elsewhere. Doubt, prayed honestly, keeps the interior fully present and engaged. The person asking into uncertainty is leaning forward. The person performing certainty they don't feel is often leaning back. He showed me two prayers side by side. One articulate, confident, theologically precise, and hollow at its center. Spoken from habit and expectation rather than genuine need. One stumbling, uncertain, barely coherent, spoken from the raw, honest place of someone who doesn't know if anyone is listening, but has nowhere else to take this. The second one landed with a clarity that was visible even from where I stood. The honest one, I said. Always, he confirmed. Doubt that is spoken honestly is not a barrier between a person and what they're praying toward. It's a conversation starter, I said. Precisely, he said. I need something specific, I said. For the people who gave up. He understood immediately what I meant. The ones who prayed faithfully through something unbearable and watched the worst outcome arrive anyway. Who prayed for someone they loved and lost them. Who brought their most honest, most desperate, most sustained prayer to the hardest moment of their lives and experienced silence. And closed the door afterward. What do I tell them? I asked. He was quiet for a moment that felt deliberate. Then, tell them the silence they experienced was not rejection. Then what was it? I asked. Tell them that some prayers are answered at a frequency they couldn't hear from where they were standing, he said. That the absence of visible response is not evidence of absence. They won't find that comforting, I said honestly. It sounds like a diplomatic way of saying no. Then tell them this, he said, shifting slightly. More direct, more personal. The pain they carried into that prayer, the desperation, the love, the terror of losing something irreplaceable that was received. Fully, completely, not the words. The love behind the words. The person who stopped praying because the answer didn't come the way they needed, that love was not wasted. I felt that land in me with significant force, and the door they closed, he continued, was closed from their side. Not from this one. It can be reopened, I said. It was never locked, he said. How do you reopen it when the grief of the unanswered prayer is still there? I asked. You say that, he said simply. Exactly that. You bring the grief. You bring the anger. You bring the closed door itself. That's still prayer, I said. That, he said, is some of the most powerful prayer I receive. I did not ask for this. He offered it. There's something I want you to see, he said. Something for you specifically. And what followed was the most personally shattering part of the entire experience. He showed me my own prayers, not transcribed, not replayed as audio, shown as living things. Each prayer I had ever prayed, visible in the quality of what it had been and what it had done. The prayers from nursing school, young and frightened and earnest. The prayers over patients whose names I barely remembered now, but whose faces I still carried. The prayer I prayed in my car the night a 15-year-old patient of mine didn't survive a shift, sitting in the hospital parking garage for 40 minutes afterward, not going home because I didn't know how to carry what had just happened. He showed me what that parking garage prayer had done, the peace it had carried to that child as he transitioned, the strength it had placed in the hands of his mother who would need to stand up and keep living. The subtle settling it had created in every person on that floor who had been shaken that night. My parking garage prayer did all of that? I said. That prayer, he said, was one of the most significant things you have ever done. I had no composure left. Whatever composure means when you have no body, I had none of it. I thought no one heard that, I said. Every prayer spoken from love over someone in their darkest moment, he said quietly, is among the things I treasure most. I let that stay. I didn't try to move past it. Some things deserve to be received fully before you continue. I didn't argue about returning. I had things to do. I understood that clearly. Not obligations in the way that word usually feels, heavy, demanding, transactional. I had people to return to, patients who needed someone who now understood what presence actually cost and what it was actually worth. Colleagues who were carrying weight without knowing its name. Go back, he said, not as a command, as a confirmation of what I already knew. I will, I said. And Colette, he said, yes. The prayer you pray tonight over whoever needs it, do not whisper it, he said. Not because volume matters, but because you've been making yourself small in that corridor for a long time. I felt that in a specific place. I'll remember that, I said. The return was gradual, the way dawn is gradual. Not dramatic, just the slow reassertion of weight and sound and the particular density of a body that has been waiting patiently for its occupant. Amara's voice first, then hands on my shoulders. She's back. Colette, stay with me. I'm here, I said. My voice felt unfamiliar, like a coat I'd left behind and just picked up again. I opened my eyes. The ICU corridor ceiling. Amara's face close to mine, professional and frightened in equal measure. You scared me, she said. The second time that night, someone said those exact words to someone else on that floor. I'm sorry, I said. And then, because I was already practicing what I'd been shown, I reached up and held her hand for a moment. I'm all right, I said. I'm genuinely all right. She looked at my face. Something's different, she said. A lot is different, I told her honestly. I wrote the first draft of this in my break room, 3 weeks after returning to work, 2 a.m, half a cup of cold coffee beside me, and 11 pages of handwritten notes I'd been collecting since February. My colleague Deshawn came in for coffee and found me at the table with papers spread everywhere. What are you writing? He asked. Something I was asked to share, I said. He poured his coffee, looked at my face for a moment the way nurses look at faces, reading it. You've been different since February, he said. I know, I said. Different good or different? Different good, I said. He nodded and left me to it. I am sharing this because I kept hearing him say, the prayers people stopped praying, the ones who closed the door, the nurses in the corridors who whisper and wonder if anyone hears. Those were the people he specifically wanted me to reach. So I am telling you directly, from a woman who has stood in more hospital corridors at 2 a.m. than she can count, who has prayed over more people than she can number, who spent years wondering if the connection was real. The connection is real. Your stumbling, uncertain, exhausted prayer, prayed through doubt and grief, and the long aftermath of an outcome you didn't want. That prayer arrived. Every single one arrived. The door is not locked from the other side. It has never been locked from the other side. And the presence that receives every prayer, the real love behind every fumbling human attempt to reach towards something larger, knows your name, knew it before you did, and is not finished with you yet. If today's testimony gave you something to reflect on, please like the video and subscribe to Esoteric Uplift. And if you have a personal experience you'd like to share, you're welcome to send it to us by email.